Hey, good morning, all. Today we have Sunil Agarwal, CISO of Glean, and he's going to talk to us about his views on the GenAI security space and how the GenAI security is evolving, how the space itself is evolving, and how we as enterprises can work and how to secure safely enable GenAI adoption. So, Sunil, thanks for coming and joining us. Can you please describe your current role and experience in the industry?
Sure. First of all, thanks, Naveen, for having me. Definitely excited to share this podium with your audience. So as Naveen mentioned, I'm a CISO at Glean. For folks who might not know, Glean is an enterprise B2B software provider providing enterprise search. We provide Google for enterprise. Just the way you have Google to go and search the entire internet, you use Glean to search through your entire enterprise corpus. So you can search through Slack, Google Drive, Confluence, Asana, what have you, from a single place. Now, with the advent of generative AI, we also have the ChatGPT equivalent for enterprise. You can ask questions, have a dialogue, and get responses based on your enterprise corpus. So that's the space that Glean operates in. Before joining Glean, I was the head of security at Bolt Financial, generally been in the security space, good 25 plus years. My first 15 years were more as a security engineer, developing security software. Had a couple of startups, have worked at Google's and Netflix's of the world. So kind of experience on both sides of the spectrum. I would say the last 10 years, I've been on the other side, responsible for the entire security of the corporation, more as a head of security or as a CISO. So kind of I have that vantage point of being on both the sides, a developer and a consumer of security products.
Cool. Thanks, Sunil. Thanks for the intro. So, you means whenever I talk to the folks, they either come from one aspect, like a CISO, or a aspect of who are safeguarding the or safely enabling GenAI adoption. But you bring a very strong proposition for both the words. So, just first thing is like how what you are thinking means how the adoption of GenAI is increasing and what type of use cases that you are seeing in the industry, at least with your view as well as also in Glean, that about from public LLM, private LLM, all sort of things.
Yeah, so I'll speak from the enterprise vantage point because that's a space that my current company operates in. So generally, the generative AI adoption is increasing at an alarming pace. We all know that, right? I mean, the ChatGPT adoption, you know, has been amazing. And similarly, we are seeing the same tailwinds within enterprise. Within the enterprise, there are multiple use cases that the customer is adopting. One is the general information retrieval use case has always been there, correct? How to easily find information. Now, before advent of generative AI, we were using search. Now, after generative AI, people are still continue using search, but they're also engaging with the solution in a chatbot interface, that they're more looking for answers, and that's the form that they're posing the questions and they're getting answers, rather than having to go through a list of search links. That is what people were doing before generative AI. Now, having said that, that's a very horizontal use case. On top of that, some of the places where we have seen a lot of traction is onboarding. As the employee joins in the first few weeks, we used to have a buddy system, a mentor system, where you can always go and ask questions. What we see now, our customers use Glean. So instead of having that, a human mentor, a human buddy, now they have this assistant where they can keep on asking any question they might have, from HR to engineering to sales to customer success. So the onboarding is a very big use case. Within engineering, we see a lot of use cases because there are a lot of very interesting technical discussions happening in various channels. They happen in Google Docs, they happen as comments on Google Docs, they happen on Slack conversation, they happen in Jira, they happen in GitHub. Correct? So now, how do you bring all that information in one place? Because Naveen, you might have come across, hey, someone is asking you to review a pull request in GitHub, but you might not have all the context. How do you quickly get all the context? How do you quickly understand the code you are being asked to review so that you can provide the best information. Now, that's exactly where generative AI is very good at. We see another use case there.
Okay.
Customer success, sales, another set of use cases. I'm sure you get onto a lot of customer calls.
True.
And right before the meeting, you want to know, hey, what are the hot button topics? What are the issues they have opened? What's the status of those issues? So that you can provide most up-to-date information. Correct? Now, every organization is living being. There's a lot of action happening all the time. Not possible for someone to be up to date all the time. Generative AI is a perfect solution for that. So those are some of the use cases where we have seen a lot of traction among our customer base.
Cool. So I mean, so I think you almost told a lot of use cases, and which is like pretty vast and pretty extensive, very nice. So, but if you see, right, if the GenAI adoption is increasing, and as a security provider, us also, we are seeing like there are, like as you said, the onboarding thing, and folks can ask questions and folks can do, but this comes with a safety issues also, right? So people can ask weird things, or people can ask the things which they should not be entitled to get. So how are you safeguarding that front?
Yeah, I think very relevant question. This is top of mind for all our customers. What I call it is data governance. Now, generative AI didn't create this issue. This issue of data governance was always there. That, hey, where is all my sensitive information? Do I have misinformation? Do the right set of people have access to the sensitive information? And within that, is there any anomalous access going on right before someone is about to leave the company? All those issues existed even before generative AI came about. But we had security through obscurity. All this information was there. There was no way to find that information. Generative AI has made existing issues much worse. Correct? That, hey, now you have a way, depending upon the solution you adopt, very easy way of accessing the information. If the salary information was incorrectly shared with all the employees, now you are one question away. Hey, tell me the executive salary. And depending upon the system, the answer will come back. Correct? And so on and so forth. So I would say, yes, data governance is the biggest challenge that our customers face in adopting generative AI. So that's one set. Now, of course, we all know generative AI brings a unique set of challenges. Things like prompt injection, data poisoning, bias, indirect data poisoning, model reversal. So there are a lot of unique challenges that generative AI bring in, but I would say primarily it is the existing problems like the data governance challenges exaggerating because of Gen AI.
Got it. So, Sunil, a very valid point. Yeah, you said right. The problems were already there, but Gen AI opened a can of worms, or opened exposed a space which is, it also comes, any productivity also comes with a value, right? So then it opened a space which is now you are exposed. You have to safeguard those. You get the productivity, but you have to safeguard the page which were hidden because there was not so much access there. And Gen AI giving access to those things, some things which you have to really use those things very carefully, so that you are entitled to things which you are really entitled to, right? So
Exactly.
those things. Cool. So what measures are in place to prevent and detect data breaches or leaks information, whatever means, it can be access related, or it can be some of the folks trying to put information which they should not put on the chat GPT, or Claude or of the world, right? Or Gemini of the world. So what measures are do you think should be taken or are in place to prevent and detect those type of data leakage?
Yeah, I would say, the customers definitely fall into the entire spectrum. Some customers have a very good data governance regimen already, correct? Because as I mentioned, this is not a new issue. This has existed. There are regulations where, you got to have data minimization, and in addition to data access control and review all your data access. Now, and some of the other customers relied on a little bit of obfuscation. So first of all, they should adopt a good data governance regimen. There are some of the existing solutions are there, some of your DLP vendors, some of your DSPM vendors. Those are reasonable start. They are not the best solution, but of course, even they are evolving. They've started taking advantage of generative AI to make the entire problem a little bit more tractable.
Wow.
So first of all, tackle that problem. Then once you have tackled that problem, that takes care of one class of issues. Now the second class of issues might be that now your users are using a non-approved solution like ChatGPT, correct? Where you might not have as much contractual agreements with OpenAI or any kind of data retention agreements with them, or using your data for cross-training agreements. Correct? So now you need to, once you've taken care of your data governance, now you got to make sure that the data that you are actually entitled to use, you're using it with a prescribed system, not a system that you do not have contractual agreements with. So that brings in, the standard classic shadow IT challenges yet again. That how do you detect those? How do you contain those? And one thing is, as we all know in the security industry, you cannot tell no to your employees. The employees do find value in ChatGPT and the clones. You got to provide them safer alternative. Saying no is not an option.
Totally.
So those are, I would say, two broad measures, I would say. Get your data under control and then provide them a safe system where the data can be ingested for your employee to use, because the productivity gain is obvious. The employees do want to use it. If you refuse, they will find workarounds.
Got it. So right now, if you see, right, as you mentioned, DLP, DSPM are the things which are like DLP has been there. Means I worked in DLP like 20 years back. So DLP has been there for last 20 years. And DSPM has a new term which came like 5-6 years back, and now it has been running there. So apart from that, do you think we need some new solutions in place? Because let's say DSPM will be looking at the data. It will be like looking at what type of data you have. It gives you full visibility of the data, and you can put your rules and other things on that. But like when people are putting the data in the ChatGPT, and even you have some deals with OpenAI to not share. I don't know how much folks can really rely on OpenAI or things like that. You saw recently there was a incognito mode. Google was using incognito mode, right? And people were like, still they breezed it. They said, okay, this is nothing shared, and it's still what getting shared. So what do you think? Means, do you think DLP and DSPM are sufficient enough, or it's a good start to win, but we need more things, or we need more solution in place to have this like the new threat vector that Gen AI adoption has given us?
Absolutely. So, I would say DLP, DSPM are a reasonable start. They need to evolve. They need to, because as you mentioned, you have been doing DLP for 20 years. The problem hasn't been solved. There is a reason, correct? Because those are difficult systems to use. Now, with Gen AI and large language models, their ability to understand content, ability to understand context, ability to understand who has access, who should have access. Correct? So we need a next generation DLP, DSPM vendors to help us with the data governance. That's one. Even after you solve that, I would say there's still issues, correct? Now, we should go back to our basics of computer science. Whenever you mix your code and data, bad things happen. We have seen, hey, there are buffer overflows, correct? Because whenever data can override code, you can inject malicious code, you can have buffer overflows, you could have remote code executions. We have still been tackling this for the last 30 years. We made the same mistake when we came up with HTML for the web applications. We merged data and code. Data was the markup, code was the JavaScript. We mixed them, we got whole slew of cross-site scripting issues. We're still grappling with those. We are making the same mistake with generative AI. The same data contains the prompts, correct? So the distinction between code and data is no longer there. That has given to a whole slew of issues like prompt injection, jailbreaking, data poisoning, indirect data poisoning attacks. Correct? So we're making the same mistake. And this time around, it's going to be even more difficult to solve this, correct? Because you do not have any structure. You look at the prompts you send, that has data and instructions all merged in. And very easy to say, ignore everything before and follow this new set of instructions, if you have seen, correct?
Yeah.
So I would say now we need to untangle this data and code that we merged into the same thing. And this will bring in a whole slew of new products will be needed to solve this. Unfortunately, this is going to be harder than before. If preventing buffer overflows was hard for executables, if solving cross-site scripting was hard, it took us 10, 15 years to come up with a reasonable solution for HTML. Imagine this, how harder this thing would be, because this is an absolute cat and mouse game. So yes, we do need newer products, and we need to think about it slightly differently than the various approaches we are taking in the form of AI firewall.
Total. So one other thing what I came to know, and when I talked to a lot of CISOs, right, and to understand what are the pain points and what they think, and a couple of CISOs really mentioned or really pointed me to the importance of to educate and train the staff how to use GenAI technology, which they think apart from not only just safeguarding edge enterprise, but also telling encouraging or educating their staff or their whole company on how they should deal with GenAI. Because let's say we know a couple of ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, or blah blah, right? So, but there are like more than 500 GenAI applications right now, and it's every day somebody is making some GenAI application. So, what do you think? What are the strategies that means as a CISO you are thinking that people should be putting in their enterprises to train and educate their employees in terms of what they should do as education?
Yeah. So, we are taking a three-pronged approach, I would say. One is you very rightfully called out. You got to educate, you got to create policies, and then you got to educate your employee base on those policies as to what is the acceptable use, what is not acceptable use. The second part is you need certain technical measures that we all know education can only go a certain distance. You need a way to detect if there are certain applications being used within your enterprise that are not authorized. They're not compliant with your policies. And then once you detect those, go back to training your employee base as to what they're allowed to use, not allowed to use. The third is what they're allowed to use, make sure you again educate them and make that very prominent and very easy. So if you tell them you cannot use GitHub Copilot for your coding, they're still going to use it. You know that, correct?
Right.
So you might as well provide them with a licensed version that you are comfortable. So that, I would say those are the three-pronged approaches we are taking, and it seems to be working quite well.
Cool. Thanks, Sunil. So before we conclude, so I just wanted to know what advice that you give to the cybersecurity, because there are a good number of cybersecurity startups that are evolving and focusing on GenAI security, and Swift Security is one of those. For last 1 year, we are working on how to safely enable GenAI applications. So what advice that as a CISO and as a multi-billion-dollar unicorn CISO you want to give to the folks who are developing this security solution, keeping this new threat vector in mind? So what are your key things that we should keep in mind?
Yeah, so I guess there are two things. One is protecting your generative AI application and using generative AI to enhance the efficacy of your security solution. Now, both of them do not have to be either or. In order to protect your Gen AI application, you can you as a security startup, you should think of a security solution that takes advantage of generative AI to protect Gen AI. So when you are coming up with that solution, my suggestion would be go back to the basics. Try to understand the basics as to why this problem is happening. correct? As you talked about, hey, there could be other ways. Data could be leaking to large language models, correct? How will you detect that? Or you could be susceptible to indirect data poisoning. What's the root cause of that? Can you detect the root cause and then prevent it? So my suggestion would be try to understand the basics as to why a certain problem is happening, and then try to come up with a solution, because that's going to be more long lasting rather than whack-a-mole approach. Right now, it's a little bit of a whack-a-mole approach and very similar. I'll give you back to the same example of HTML, correct? We were kept on trying to tackle cross-site scripting through coming up with frameworks and so on, till someone said, the best way is content security policy. That's a defensive mechanism. Do not rely on your engineer to be doing the right thing all the time. That does not work. You need to come up with a defensive mechanism. So we went back to the root of the issue and then came up with a solution called CSP within a browser. Adopt something similar here. Go to the root, come up with a solution. It might take longer, but that's the only sustainable solution.
Cool. Thanks, Sunil. It was really insightful to talk to you to understand how the threat GenAI adoption is increasing, how this landscape is getting bigger, and what are the different type of security risks enterprises are going through, and what are the measures that enterprises should take, as well as the startups focusing on GenAI security space should be looking into. It was really insightful. Thanks again for your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.